For years, I never questioned her loyalty. That blind faith, that unwavering belief that she would never betray me, was my greatest mistake. I was the kind of husband who trusted with ease, not out of naivety, but because I believed that trust was the cornerstone of love. When she said she was going out for an evening with friends, I didn't interrogate her or double-check the story. I simply kissed her goodbye, wished her a good time, and returned to whatever I was doing. That was our rhythm. That was our life for years. But that particular night was different. I couldn't quite articulate why. There was no dramatic red flag, no suspicious message, no sudden change in behavior. It was subtle, a shift in the air. Maybe it was the way she looked. Nothing scandalous, but undeniably deliberate. She wore elegant heels, a pair I'd never seen before, instead of her usual worn-out sneakers. Her hair was freshly styled, every strand in place, and there was a scent lingering around her. Something unfamiliar, expensive, seductive. Not her usual floral body spray. It was the kind of perfume chosen with purpose. She had a glow about her, I remember thinking. A subtle radiance, like someone who had something to look forward to, not just a casual night with friends. When I asked who she was meeting, her answer was oddly vague. Just the regular group, she muttered, eyes darting away as she grabbed her purse a little too quickly. It wasn't what she said, but how she said it. Like she was rehearsed. Like she needed to get out before I could ask more. Even as the door shut behind her and the car pulled out of the driveway, I tried to dismiss the gnawing suspicion clawing at my gut. I told myself I was being paranoid, insecure. Maybe even unfair. But then again, real intuition doesn't scream. It whispers. And that whisper wouldn't go away. I waited 5 minutes. Then I got in my car and followed. She didn't notice. Not once did she glance in the rearview mirror or hesitate at a stop sign. She was either too comfortable in her lie or too convinced that no one would ever suspect her. She bypassed the familiar restaurants she usually mentioned, ignored the shopping plaza where her friends typically met. Instead, she drove deeper into the city, toward the center, toward luxury. I kept my distance, heart pounding, every mile making the truth harder to deny. She eventually pulled into the valet line at a high-end hotel, one I recognized from work events. It was the kind of place where privacy was promised and secrets were kept behind tinted glass and polished marble. She stepped out alone. No friends, no group waiting for her. No laughter, no chatter. Just her. Then I saw him. From across the street, partially hidden behind a line of taxis, I spotted a man step out of the hotel's entrance. Tall, confident, dressed in a navy suit that looked tailored to perfection. My stomach dropped. It was him, my mentor. The man who had guided me through my career, who had offered advice over coffee, patted my back at company galas, and spoken highly of me in executive meetings. He knew my wife's name. He'd shaken her hand. He'd smiled at me with the ease of someone who had nothing to hide. And now he was placing his hand on the small of her back like he belonged there. The way they embraced, it wasn't platonic. It wasn't professional. It was intimate, practiced, routine. They didn't look around. They didn't care who saw them. That was what gutted me. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time lapse. This was normal for them. I didn't storm across the street. I didn't yell or cause a scene. I stood there, frozen, heart pounding like a war drum. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and took photos. Not out of malice, but because I needed proof. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. Proof that the people I trusted most had buried a knife in my back. I didn't go home that night. I drove aimlessly for hours, haunted by the image of their bodies leaning into each other. The echo of their betrayal louder than any argument we'd ever had. I stopped at a gas station sometime after 4 a.m. and just sat there, staring at the empty passenger seat, feeling like my entire world had cracked down the middle. When I finally did return, late the next day, she was already home. Collected. Acting like nothing had happened. She greeted me with a smile and asked if I was okay. I told her I hadn't slept. She joked that I looked tired. I met her eyes and said, quietly but firmly, Because I've seen the truth. For a split second her mask slipped. Her eyes widened. She swallowed hard. But then she recovered, launching into damage control mode. She claimed it was a business meeting. That he needed her insights on a project. That I was overreacting. "You're blowing this way out of proportion," she said with a straight face. I didn't argue. I showed her the photos. The denial crumbled. What came next wasn't remorse or guilt. It wasn't even fear of being caught. It was anger. Fury that I had dared to follow her. That I had pulled back the curtain on her double life. Her expression hardened. The warmth vanished. What remained was someone cold, calculating, and unapologetic. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I simply said what I had rehearsed 100 times during that long, sleepless night. "You could have told me you were unhappy. You could have had the courage to say you wanted something else. But instead you chose lies. You chose to betray me with the man who controls my career. That was your choice. Now here's mine. You've lost me. And he's about to lose everything." I left that night and never looked back. The next day I reached out to his wife. I didn't do it to be vindictive. I did it because she deserved to know. I sent her the photos, explained where it happened, when it started, and how long I suspected it had been going on. Then I submitted an anonymous email to our company's HR department. I included the time-stamped photos and the hotel receipts I found on our joint account. There was no need for explanation. The evidence spoke for itself. It's been 6 months since then. I live alone now, in a quiet apartment overlooking the city. At night, I sleep without tension in my chest or doubt in my mind. I learned that trust is sacred, and when it's broken, the damage doesn't just bruise, it shatters. But you don't beg for clarity or chase after closure. You let liars collapse under the weight of their own deception. Sometimes the greatest revenge is not in shouting or destroying, but in rising. In walking away with your dignity intact while they drown in the ruin they created. Because I was always worth more than they ever truly saw. And now they see it too.